This is a road. All roads lead somewhere, and this road, US Highway 1, leads to, among other places, New Smyrna Beach, Florida. Like all towns, and like all people for that matter, New Smyrna Beach lives in a narrow present that is shaped both by its past and by its future. This is a road, too, the comprehensive plan for New Smyrna Beach. It's a set of rules and instructions that's supposed to guide the way the town lives into its future, so that the values and things which most of the townspeople think are important today will still be important here tomorrow. But the road to the future is no straighter than any other road, and sometimes it splits into very different directions. The choices we make at these crossroads could change New Smyrna Beach and its people, maybe forever. Although the state of Florida officially calls it a city, New Smyrna Beach is really a town. A small town at that. And when you ask people, that's one of the things they like best about the place.
I love New Smyrna. I come to get away from the traffic, the noise.
It's not as commercialized, not as flashy as some of the other areas.
Good people with a lot of old good values.
It's just a nice break from the hubbub that's going on in Atlanta.
The beach and the boys.
Yeah.
People are so very caring. They are interested in each other and they help each other. You know, that's something you don't find in a huge, large city.
The people are very warm and hospitable here. I like the people here. You know, you meet new people, and I don't know, basically I just like it here.
Being relatively restricted growth, I suspect, in the future, and I thought it'd be a good value.
Well, it's a lot less crowded. It's kind of like Florida, how it used to be a long time ago.
Yeah, very laid back.
It's a smaller town. It's just delightful, and the beach itself is taken care of so well. It's amazing.
I think you got South Beach beat all as well. You know.
We looked at towns all up and down the East Coast and some on the West Coast, and the pace of living seems to be a lot slower here than up in Daytona or Venice or some of the other places that we've looked.
I believe I like it just the way it is. As a matter of fact, my daughter hadn't been here in several years, and when we pulled up over here a while ago to park, she said it's exactly the way she remembered it, and that's what she likes about it.
Oh, the quality of life, I can live to be 100 here, and I know that.
Unspoiled beauty and a relaxed lifestyle are not just pleasant luxuries here, but real financial assets too, because tourism drives most of the economy in New Smyrna Beach. The Chamber of Commerce says a conservative estimate of the number of visitors to New Smyrna is 2.5 to 3 million people a year. That's based on a Department of Transportation survey of cars arriving from I-95 on State Road 44, which is considered the main approach to the town. It means the number of visitors is 100 times the resident population of New Smyrna, even including the 20% of residents who only live here part of the year. Tourists come to New Smyrna because it's different, strikingly different from other towns nearby. Those towns look the way they do as a direct result of planning decisions made by their local governments. To people who live there, a town is a place to call home, a place to raise a family maybe, or just to kick back and relax. A town is also a place to do business. Homes and schools, roads and stores, and the natural environment are all important to a town. They all affect and are affected by each other. When we stop paying equal attention to all the important elements of our towns, we create lopsided places that are ugly and inefficient.
I came from Frederick, Maryland, which is a bedroom community of Washington, D.C., and I saw what happened there. The development just went rampant, and it really made it an unpleasant place to live. It's so crowded, the traffic is so bad you can't get around, and 20 years ago it was just a wonderful place to live. It's sort of like New Smyrna now, but they didn't control the development, and it ruined it.
People in New Smyrna have a strong sense of what's important about their town. Luckily for them, many of the small town qualities they like are also important to the town's tourism-based economy. But people have all kinds of ideas about money. That's where the town's comprehensive plan comes in. In Florida, decisions about zoning and other regulations that control the way a town develops are not made directly by the town's citizens, but by their elected officials, who are supposed to be guided by the town's plan. New Smyrna lawyer Clay Henderson has participated in the planning process and explains how it works.
Before a zoning ordinance can be effective, there must be public hearings. Public has the right and the obligation and the opportunity to come forward and speak to that, and so it requires a lot of interaction before something is passed. So there really are opportunities for citizens to get involved and influence the zoning process. What came out of that were joint committees between the city and the county that worked together with the landowners out there and with the people who lived out there to try to design what they saw as a gateway for the city. And what did that mean? It meant limited commercial. It meant protection of the single-family residences that were there. It meant setbacks from the road to try to protect the green space. It also meant some open space requirements so that every square foot of that area would not be completely developed, and to provide, a way of an entrance to the city that was consistent with the rest of New Smyrna. I think that New Smyrna did a very good job of using its comprehensive plan process to protect some of its historical values and its natural resources values that make this community so special. New Smyrna is one of the few places that actually put a historic preservation element into its comprehensive plan, and was one of the places that really incorporated the important natural features like protection of the beach, protection of the Indian River Lagoon, protection of this vast estuary, and an understanding that these are some of the critical values that really support the quality of life in this community.
Unfortunately, sometimes plans change. No sooner had New Smyrna agreed that the main approach to the town would be protected as a scenic gateway when a local businessman applied for and received an exemption. This miniature golf course and amusement arcade was called a park. And presumably because a park would be compatible with a scenic corridor, it was allowed. In order to do this, a thin finger of county land along State Road 44 was made part of the city of New Smyrna Beach. And if people in the residential neighborhoods around the site didn't like it, well, they lived in the county, not the city, and were not welcome to interfere with city business. Florida is what's called a home rule state. That means local governments here have a lot of control over where and how laws are enforced. New Smyrna resident Gwen Straub found that out when she became interested in trees.
I noticed myself that in single-family empty lots, unimproved lots, they were being clear-cut. Then they'd build a house, and the city required that 2 palm trees be planted. It certainly didn't seem in the city's best interest, that policy, so I started looking into tree ordinances in other cities in Central Florida. And I found out that their ordinance, which exempted single-family lots up to 5 in a row from the provisions of their ordinance, violated county minimum standards. And the county had told them back about 11 years ago to improve their ordinance. They sent them an ordinance which the county said was fine, and they assumed that the city had passed it. But in 1989, the city never did. The city had been, strangely enough, very stringent on individual homeowners. They wouldn't let you take out anything on your own lot, living in your own home, unless it was diseased or digging up your sidewalk or interfering with the utility lines. And yet, in new construction, they just about let anything come down.
A plan, of course, is only as good as the people who are guided by it. Like his neighbors, New Smyrna Mayor Jim Vandergrift has a vision of what his town's future should be like.
I think our comprehensive plan shows that, in the most part, that the type of community we have is one of residents. There's not a lot of commercialism in the city. Our only aspect of the future and the vision for the future would be out west of the actual city limits of what they are today. And I think the I-95 44 corridor is the only commercial activity that we're going to find within the city. Those areas, some of them are controlled by the county at this time. We've tried to control all of our annexations that go to the west to the event that it would be less intrusive to what we already have in this city. And I think that our vision of the city has been one that focuses on our character of what we have today. I think being a part of the city and the people of the city that can register their voice is what we're all about. We never stop anyone from speaking at our regular city commission meetings on any subject that we want to talk about. Any of the zoning ordinances, new ordinances, anyone that would like to speak on those, we listen to the public, and if it's an issue that we feel is real controversial, we even call special meetings and let the public have an opportunity to speak on those issues as well. I think the vision of the future is what you see today.
One of the toughest choices the mayor and his town now face is what to do about that commercial activity he mentioned. Specifically, what to do about big retail chain stores that want to locate in New Smyrna. The way zoning usually works, once you've opened the door to a particular kind of development in an area, more inevitably follows. The question is partly, do the benefits to the town of stores like this outweigh their negative impacts? Do more tax revenues and some new jobs outweigh more traffic, more costs for city services, more impact on the environment, and the loss of some existing jobs? That's a very good question, especially where the small-town lifestyle is so important both to residents and to the tourist economy. If the town wants this kind of development, it also needs to decide where to put it. If New Smyrna wants a scenic approach instead of 6 lanes of commercial access like its neighbors to the north, it needs to stick with its comprehensive plan. There were good reasons for keeping the main approach to New Smyrna green and residential. It was already a well-established residential community, for one thing. Plus, the land drains poorly and regularly floods. When homeowners here applied for permission to subdivide their land, their application was denied because the county didn't want too many houses on the floodplain. When the Walmart Corporation applied to build a superstore on the land right next door, however, it was assumed flooding was now no longer an issue. Engineers sometimes say that bigger building projects can more aggressively deal with potential problems like flooding. But it's crazy to suggest fixing a forest by paving it over. That's a so-called cure that's worse than the illness. Even chemicals like fertilizers, which are beneficial when soaked directly into the ground in small amounts, are bad for the environment when they're gathered together into more concentrated doses and moved around on large areas of pavement. And chemicals which are already nasty in small amounts get really terrible when concentrated. More parking lots and more cars mean more pollution in stormwater runoff. Around here, that can wind up in fragile coastal mangrove swamps or in the Indian River Lagoon. Former schoolteacher Gracie Bark lives on New Smyrna's north coast and went through all this once before.
Okay, we are now on the 14th floor of the Inlet condominium, which was built in the 1980s and at the time was the largest concrete pour in Volusia County. Lonnie Griffin, who was chairman of the board, decided this was such a success he wanted to build a 29-story called the Monarch. But it seems as though the people in New Smyrna decided that 20 stories was enough. And they filled the room at the DeBerry Room, and everyone in that meeting was opposed to it except one person. So the City Commission denied the 29-story building. Later on, a new buyer came on the scene, and an ordinance was passed that nothing here could be more than 9 stories tall. When these buildings were planned and passed on, we noted they were located east of the coastal construction line. But we didn't like that, so we challenged them building it there. And Mr. Cheesem and his staff looked into the matter and realized that these dunes will protect not only his property, but others' property as well. And he decided to move the 2 buildings back westward of the coastal construction line. And that was considered a done deal, and we parted friends. When you're right, you know you're right. And the business of property rights is an important thing. It's important to the property that we own. But when your property rights infringe on other people's, then it's another story.
The world is a much more complicated place than we used to think. Even business is not as straightforward as it once was. America has become so saturated with retail stores that even the government is concerned about its effect on our economy. A 1994 Congressional Research Service report found, at this point, new entrants can succeed only at the expense of existing retailers, in which case there is no real growth. This is a particular concern of retailers in slow growth areas anticipating the arrival of a large discount chain. New Smyrna has seen this for itself too, when the town's first malls put several downtown Canal Street stores out of business.
Over here is where the Western Auto used to be. The back of it now is a Domino's pizza restaurant. Where that is now, we used to have a bicycle repair shop, a lawnmower repair. In front of there we had tires and batteries for cars. And then the whole main front of the store we had bicycles, housewares, you name it, everything. Out front, and we always, every morning we parked the bicycles along the front on Canal Street, and it kind of was a symbol that the store was open. Over to the right here, the movie theater. This used to be a walk-in movie theater. I can't really remember when it closed. It's been a long time. Oh, Sunshine TV was right up the street on the left. They had a nice electronics store. They were there forever. And Ace Hardware, they're now gone. I don't know, there's 4 or 5 vacant buildings right now on just this first block of Canal Street.
Roy Kugler knows this story all too well. He owned the Western Auto store that used to be in this building.
Canal Street was a pretty busy little street. Most all the shops were full. A lot of traffic downtown, and small town atmosphere. Saturdays were extremely busy. I know people came to town on Saturdays, and it was just an interesting place to shop. As time went on, we started getting some of the big box stores come to town, and one by one we started seeing some of the businesses fall, and I ended up being one myself. I lasted about 5 years here, and as sales began to falter and the traffic began to deteriorate downtown, one by one we saw the Western Auto store, we saw the Dollar store, Frank's Men's Shops, Sunshine TV, just to name some that come to mind right now, that all left downtown. People didn't move to New Smyrna to go shopping. I think they moved here for the atmosphere, the recreation, the water, the the small town feeling that you had living here. Practically everyone knew everybody, and still that way somewhat. There's a lot more people here now, but it's still a small town.
Canal Street is still recovering from the impact of New Smyrna's first retail wars. And the same cannibalistic competition played itself out in the town's malls, as each bright new idea left abandoned stores in its wake. Today, only one of the town's 5 malls is mostly functional. Ironically, one of its anchor stores is a Walmart, which would close if a super Walmart were built further out. Only Texas, incidentally, has more abandoned Walmarts as of 1999 than Florida. The problem of retail blight is regional as well as local. State Representative Suzanne Cosmas lives in New Smyrna Beach and represents the surrounding district.
I personally find that when I travel the state of Florida and even other states as well, when I pull off the interstate, for example, I can't tell what city I'm in. I could be anywhere USA. And I think the problem is that we've allowed development and under the guise of growth to take the place of imagination and protection of what I refer to as quality of life within our communities. You might say, as the old Pete Seeger song, they're all made out of ticky-tacky and they all look just the same. And to me, that's very much what I see when I travel around the state and in other states, that communities have lost their identity and given over to not only big boxes, but other interests under the guise of development where they've given up something in exchange for perhaps a tax resource that may or may not pay for itself. I know there was a study recently done that included the state of Florida that said in spite of the fact that we in 1985 implemented the Growth Management Act, we have found that local governments tend to concede to developers and others and allow for more urban sprawl rather than less. And because of some of the requirements that we put into the Growth Management Act, we actually have not done the kind of infill, urban infill that would be more amenable to our current communities and qualities of life.
Homes and schools, roads and stores and the natural environment are all important to a town. If we want economically responsible government and lower taxes, we need to remember that there are no free rides. We need to make better use of streets and services we've already paid for before we build something new someplace else. A community is more than just a collection of private citizens who happen to live near each other. If we want healthy places, we need to remember that we're all in this together. What we do to one part of our community affects other parts too. And not every important thing in our lives can be measured in dollars and cents. That's what planning and growth management are all about, finding ways to keep our communities in balance. We're all a part of this process. If you don't participate actively, you're letting other people, who may represent only narrow points of view, or who may not even live in your town, decide what happens where you live. One way or another, we travel the road to the future. What we see when we get there depends on choices we make right now.